Double check this one more time. That should do it, I hope.
Okay, great. So let me just focus you up a little bit here.
While we're doing that, am I going to be talking to you in the chair or talk to the camera?
Yeah, so I'm going to move the chair a little bit closer to the camera.
Okay.
Just so...
So it doesn't look like I'm staring.
Yeah, it makes it look a little
Yeah,
more
I'm
natural.
going to talk about this.
Exactly, exactly.
Don't record that part.
Don't worry, I'm not recording right now.
I act weird enough when I know the camera's running. I don't need it.
No worries, no worries. Okay, I'm going to just the lighting a little bit. Okay. There we go. Nice. And so it's only really going to be like from like here up, and then I'll get some other shots.
Okay.
Yeah, of like your buttons and like the signs and stuff like that. But
Cool.
just for the purposes of
the interview itself, yeah.
There we go. Oops.
That wasn't really well in the background anyway, was it? When
No, it was. Here, let me see if I can like, even if we just did it like that.
Might have hit the wall as well, yeah.
Let me see if that works. I feel like it might look better without it. It's fine. I've gotten some video of it.
This gets so much attention when we have these signs.
Oh, I bet. I
bet. You see people going, free marijuana? Information.
Well, I searched, I was trying to find if I could, I was trying to find advocates anywhere. And I searched like South Carolina medical marijuana and like no post showed up. And I was like, it's definitely blocked on Facebook.
The word marijuana is really blocked on Facebook.
Yeah.
If you don't if you don't belong to a group or a page or something, and you try and type the word marijuana, there's even groups I know of, but I'm not members of, so I try and find them. They block the word marijuana, cannabis. It's all part of the negative stigma that they attach to a word, to a plant.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're talking about it. I'm surprised that my organization is even letting me do a marijuana story, because my last station would have been like, no. But I was a producer in New Jersey for a little bit, and I don't know, you probably keep up with like most of the
I try and follow what the other
Yeah.
states are doing. There's a lot going on, so sometimes I miss, but...
Right, and that's why there's organizations like Normal that like kind of try and put it all in one place, right? So like you can kind of see if you can keep up with. But I remember we were like, it was a big day, like recreational marijuana was supposed to be legalized in New Jersey. Our station was like ready to go wall-to-wall coverage, and like that morning the vote got called off, and then they were like, maybe next session. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I am ready to go if you are. And I might get up and check
Yep.
might get up and check it, because I can't unfortunately look at it over here, but I am recording. So if I could, would you mind saying and spelling out your full name?
My full name is actually Robert Scott Weldon, RobertScottWeldon, but I go by my middle name, Scott.
Okay, awesome. And Scott, what is your position with Normal?
I am the founder and executive director of the South Carolina chapter of Normal.
Okay, and you founded the original chapter,
Originally,
right?
we founded as a regional chapter, the Low Country Regional, and as the other chapters that had been in the state, Columbia Normal, Aiken Normal, Myrtle Beach Normal, Upstate Normal, had all sort of dissolved, and so National asked if we would take over the state affiliate position.
Gotcha.
We are hopefully soon getting ready to open a subchapter in Columbia. We have a couple folks up there, and actually we recently dropped off some signs and postcards and brochures for them to start distributing in that area.
Right, yeah. So what is Normal? What does the organization do?
Normal is the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws. It was founded by Keith Stroop in 1970. I think the official paperwork then was filed through in 71. Previous to founding NORML, Keith had worked under Ralph Nader, very consumer-oriented rights and civil liberties type activities. And when his time there was time to move on, he wanted to start an organization, again focused mostly on civil rights and civil liberties. And he happened to like marijuana, so he started NORML as an organization to educate and to reform marijuana laws.
And here we are.
And here we are. 50 years later, here we are.
Right. So South Carolina is one of 4 states where any sort of form of marijuana is illegal, right? Completely, no medical, no recreational, all that stuff. So it is a very, very conservative state when it comes to
correct. The
marijuana.
closest we get is the hemp CBD type products, and you'll hear it even from the medical advocates here in South Carolina. That is not enough for some of the patients. They definitely need a little bit of that THC in there. But of course, then there's that fear factor from our legislators. So that's been a push.
Mm-hmm. So today we're mainly focusing on Senator Davis's Compassionate Care Act, which I don't know if it's being debated now. We're trying to keep an eye on it, but it is happening this week.
Today or tomorrow is my understanding, and I know one of our supporters had posted on Facebook earlier that he was up outside the Senate doors, going to be there by 11 o'clock in anticipation of them starting today, so hopefully we'll know more a little later this afternoon.
Right. So let's talk about this act. We know that Senator Davis has tried numerous times before this session to get this bill passed. So what is its significance for the state?
The significance for the state would be the first medically legalized marijuana in the state. Although there's not as many qualifying conditions as some of the other states may have, it's a very conservative bill. It would at least be a step in the right direction to help alleviate some of the suffering of many patients.
Absolutely. And I think in a lot of other states we've seen this kind of slow progression. States that have legalized recreational marijuana started with medical. So would you see this as kind of like a foot in the door to getting to that point?
Well, moving forward past medical is inevitable. There's already legislation, has been for years legislation to decriminalize marijuana in the South Carolina legislature. A good example is Mia McLeod's Senate Bill 335, which looks to remove marijuana from the state's constitution Schedule 1 and to basically reduce the penalties. So that's one. I'm a little confused in the language. Is it a legalization bill or a decriminalization bill? But because it talks primarily of just reducing penalties for simple possession, I view it primarily as a decriminalization bill. And then there's 3 House bills that are also out there that are decriminalization bills for simple possession. Another one I do like to point out from time to time, and I just want to grab the number so I know it offhand, there's House Bill 3202, which basically would be a decriminalization for veterans discharged honorably to possess up to an ounce of marijuana without penalty. So the legislation's already out there. Things are going to eventually move. It's not like anybody's hiding the fact that we feel marijuana prohibition is unconstitutional. We believe that the harms imposed by the enforcement of unconstitutional marijuana laws are more harmful than anything the plant could ever do to somebody. And that's our position very steadfastly.
Absolutely. So let's go back to that point that you kind of touched on with the conservative aspects of this bill. So it's historic if it does actually make it through the legislature this session. But you mentioned it's pretty limited in what it would allow South Carolinians to have access to.
Correct. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe the Senate Bill S-150 has 12 qualifying conditions in it, where the House companion bill to that by Representative Herb Kurzman, H3361, does include 14 qualifying conditions, and also in the Herb Kurzman bill includes smokable marijuana and the availability of flower in dispensaries, which were things that were removed from Tom Davis's bill at the whim of law enforcement.
Right. So what are those limitations? What is the significance of that? Is that something that normal, or at least your chapter, is that something that concerns you or you have issues with?
The limitations as far as the qualifying conditions?
Just any of the limitations of this bill, that is.
Oh yeah, and there isn't a state in the nation that has passed a medical marijuana bill that hasn't gone back to readdress it, to update it, to improve it. And South Carolina won't be any different than that. I've had some of our supporters contact me and say, well, what about the Second Amendment violations that are going to be implemented into the bill? If you get your medical marijuana card, you lose your right to carry a handgun or a weapon. You lose your Second Amendment rights. And we have a lot of people in South Carolina that are very concerned about that. They're very steadfast believers in their Second Amendment rights. And they don't want to have the government saying, oh, well, just because you take this particular medication, now we're going to remove your right to possess and protect yourself. So that's one thing that some of our supporters are concerned about. Another one is home grow that they're concerned about. And also the big concern really is the taking away the smokable type version, because even as Senator Tom Davis has described, he understands that the efficacy of smoking is much more beneficial to some patients, especially vets with PTSD, but because of the whim of law enforcement and them not knowing how to differentiate between the smell of medical marijuana and the smell of recreational marijuana, they just don't want to smell it burning whatsoever. That's sort of their switch between legal and legal activity, is the burning of the plant.
Right. So I didn't even know about the Second Amendment portion, so I would have to definitely take a look at that. But it is interesting I've never heard of that.
And there's also no protection for vets in the bill either.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's nothing specifically protecting veterans. It's a bill for the everyday citizen. But if you're in the military, you follow by a whole other group of rules. You follow your own military court system. And there's nothing in this bill to sort of address the needs of veterans for medical cannabis in the South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. So you've kind of touched on this, but why do you think the bill has gotten to this conservative point, that it's gotten pared down, I guess, from what Senator Davis has originally pitched to the Senate?
I really don't think it has changed a lot as far as the qualifying conditions in these 7 years or so that it's been out there. The one thing I did like in the changes in this particular bill over the past version in the last legislature was the last bill had 50% of all the tax revenue going to SLED and the 46 county sheriff's offices, and now 85% of it goes to the general fund. His comment was, if law enforcement wants any of that money, they can go and they can request it from the general fund like everybody else did. Because we believe that 50% in the last bill was kind of a bribe or a buyout to try and get law enforcement on board with the bill. Didn't happen that way, so he pulled that from the bill. So we're pleased about that. Mm-hmm. But I believe it's just taken so long because a lot of our state is heavily influenced by law enforcement. Our governor was let me see if I get this right, a prosecuting attorney under the Reagan administration. And a big part of what he did back in the time was went after marijuana smugglers in the Low Country in the late 70s, early 80s. There's a book out there called Jackpot that was written about it. Rather interesting. And so Henry McMaster is very steeped in the propaganda of marijuana being the gateway drug and this portal to evil. And I believe it's that sort of stigma and misinformation and propaganda that has kept South Carolina from moving forward all these years.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that things have changed among the general population, at least, with that stigma and understanding?
Oh, absolutely. I believe the voters, the registered voters, have really shown that they support moving, especially medical marijuana, forward. It was on a primary question, I want to say in 2020, on the Democratic primary ticket. And don't quote me exactly on the numbers, but it was 82 or 84% of the people, of the respondents said yes. Doctors should be able to, the question was prescribe, but in essence recommend cannabis to their patients. Mm-hmm. The Republicans haven't put that on the primary question, and the GOP in South Carolina says our constituents don't care about that, which their constituents gave them quite a bit of blowback in 2020 on that, because I would say the number is approximately 65% of Republican voters that are that believe that medical marijuana should be moved forward, if not decriminalization and or recreational. The numbers are relatively high across the aisle. It is not a partisan issue. It is definitely all parties seem to be supporting at least some marijuana law reform.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that this is the session? Do you think that this is the session that it will be passed in?
I am always skeptically optimistic. I had hoped the last session it would have gotten out of the Senate. So it's hard to say. Tom Davis seems to be pretty certain about it. I believe he needs 24 votes to get it out of the Senate, if my numbers are accurate. If they need 50% plus one or something like that. And I think he's got 15 co-sponsors on the bill, so 9 more votes. It may get out of the Senate and go to the House, and we'll see how the House handles it. The House, from what my understanding, has basically just been sitting on the Herb Kirschman bill, waiting to see what happens with the Tom Davis bill. And as you can see, it's moving forward, so probably that they'll amend that in whatever way they feel necessary, mm-hmm. Hopefully vote it forward and get it back to the House for final approval. Then we still have the question of, will our governor sign the bill?
Right, and he hasn't said anything.
He has not. He's always basically said he will not. There was a point earlier this year, I want to say maybe August or so, after Joe Cunningham announced his pro-marijuana policy, that his opinions on medical may be evolving, but it was nothing clear.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you, because we talked about this over the phone, and I thought that it was just such a great quote. What were you talking about when people joke with you that South Carolina is going to be the last in the state to legalize recreational weed?
Quite often people ask me, when is marijuana going to become legalized in South Carolina? And they go, we're going to be last, aren't we? We're going to be last. And I jokingly say, I'm not sure. I kind of think that maybe Puerto Rico will become a state and legalize before us, and we'll be 51st. That usually gets a little chuckle, but that's kind of descriptive of how I feel about the South Carolina legislature moving forward.
Right. It's kind of like South Carolina is a very traditional, very conservative state.
It is, and it's going to be up to the voters to actually make those changes at the polls, if we're ever going to see changes at the state level. I was surprised at the last round of elections, some of the candidates that were elected into office, especially considering their staunch anti-marijuana policies. But then again, voters in South Carolina seem to be very dedicated to their parties, no matter what the issue. Me, I tend to be a little bit more of an issue voter. And I have no problems voting across the aisle if I believe the candidate supports my beliefs and cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good analysis. So Scott, is there anything else that you wanted to mention while we're sitting down doing this interview?
There are a couple things I'd like to mention, and the main thing is I'd like to mention that on February 9th, South Carolina NORML is going to be holding a press conference at the State House in Columbia, in the first floor main lobby of the State House. We have invited some guest speakers to speak. We're still confirming those at this point. And our main focus on the press conference is going to be our efforts to basically promote harm reduction through decriminalization of cannabis in South Carolina. We're also going to be following that with our lobby day, so we're inviting people to visit our website for information on how to sign up and go along with us to the State House and visit their legislators along with us. We have one of our teammates already starting to call the offices and make scheduling starting today. So hopefully by the time February 9th rolls around, we'll have a nice full schedule and a whole bunch of legislators to go and give them a bunch of free marijuana information.
So has your organization, or at least the South Carolina chapter, have y'all done that before? Is this new?
This is our first lobby day. Yeah, I've been, well, as we were a regional chapter, we really did not travel up to the State House or anywhere else in the state besides here in the Low Country. Of course, now the pandemic for the past couple of years has kept us pretty much away from being out and about anywhere. Just recently, about a week or two ago, we did happen to visit in Columbia at one of their vendor markets called the Soda City Market and passed out a whole bunch of our brochures, which include the NORML Foundation Freedom Card, explains your rights under the Constitution. Everybody should have it, and they're free. Just come see me. We'll give you a brochure. And we also hand out a lot of our postcards to mail out to your legislators. And again, one of our signs, we do have a press conference coming up. So we have a whole bunch of signs for our folks to hold. If you don't really want to talk to your legislators, but you do want to come and show your support, show up at 9 o'clock on February 9th. We'll hand you a sign, and we'll try and make a presence for the media and for our legislators. Let them know that we need to change laws in South Carolina. We do not want to keep locking people up. It's a victimless crime, and there's more harm that comes from enforcement than there does from consumption of the plant.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess baby steps, right? Baby steps in South Carolina.
Baby steps, and a lot of it is 2 baby steps forward and 3 back.
Absolutely. All right, well, great, Scott. I think I got everything I needed.
All right.